by my watch, it is 2 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We are missing 1 or 2 commissioners who will be joining us about 5 to 7 minutes late. So we'll call the meeting to order. And let me just check to see, are there any commissioners participating by phone today or online participation? Doesn't look like we have anybody. Ms. Hodges, this might be a question for you, just to make sure I don't overstep. Welcome, Ms. Hodges. We obviously do not have a technical quorum in person yet, so we can't take action. Is there any reason we can't?
Annabelle.
Sorry? Hi, Annabelle. Correct, but my question is can we proceed through public comment? We do, yep. Right. Perfect. So Commissioner Fernandez, I see you on the line. Thank you. At the moment, we don't have a quorum here to approve your participation, but we're not going to be doing anything at the moment anyhow. I think she's on there, correct, Annabelle?
I see her name.
Yeah, I agree. So,
Oh, it might say others invited. Is that what that?
oh, it's others invited. Thank
So
you.
she is.
Never mind. I read the same
I
thing,
think
Commissioner. Commissioner Phillips, I read the same thing. So with that, we have no other commissioners on the line. I'm going to go ahead and open up the meeting now for public comments. Just a reminder to the public, this is your time to comment on any items on the agenda or any comments you might have that could be directed to this Board of Commissioners. We are limiting your comment times to 3 minutes each, which we would appreciate that you adhere to, and we'll give you a notice when that time is expired. Should you have any comments, please state your name and address for the record. We'll start with anybody physically in the room here present at the Jacksonville Housing Authority's headquarters. Any public comments in the room here? Okay, hearing none in the room. Are there, yes. Commissioner Phillips, anything?
I just had a question. I noticed it says others from chat, and Taffany Reed's name is up there. Is she still under contract with the authority?
No, her name just popped.
Or it does?
Okay. At this time, I'll open up the public comment to anybody that is attending online. If you're attending online, if you could either raise your hand virtually or speak up at this time to be recognized. Anybody online like to participate in public comment? Hearing none, I will go ahead and close public comment. I think we're getting close to, so chair's comments, I'll go ahead and start. One of the things that I've been thinking about and just talking about, so from the chair's comments perspective, I'll take the prerogative for the moment. Mr. Alexander, I'd like to schedule one of these board meetings working through the commissioners in the foreseeable future to be in an evening, which I know is not overly convenient, but I think it would give our residents a chance to participate should they like to participate. I know many of them have day jobs, 9 to 5, they can't take off the time. So I would hope that we could have maybe a board meeting. Memory serves, we do take a summer break, is that correct? Maybe the meeting before the summer break. And I would certainly welcome and encourage a presentation from RAB. Come in and talk to us. I think would be a welcome experience and dialogue. So just wanted to open it up. That's kind of something I had thought about as the chair with the 2 commissioners that are present. Do you guys have any thoughts on this, or logistically, if that's potentially a problem? Okay. So if we could work on that, Mr. Alexander, I'd be grateful. The other thing I just wanted quickly as chair's comments and get some feedback on, Mr. Alexander, and then Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner Brock, is how is the new meeting date at the end of the month working relative to getting through committees, getting financials prepared, so by the time we're here, things are being taken care of. Mr. Alexander, then I'll open it up to the commissioners.
Yes, I thank you, Commissioner. I think that the change of the date works out excellent for our staff and reporting. We've been able to get our reports out early enough and schedule our meetings the second week of the meeting, as well as not have a meeting on the third week, but puts us in preparation for this board meeting. So I think it works out well.
Okay, great. Commissioner Brock or Commissioner Phillips, any thoughts? Think we need to change this or tweak it in any way? Okay. Thank you. My only other comments, because I'm sure there's some folks that have been pinged privately, and I'll just go ahead and state it during the chair's comments, so that those that are listening that want to get off can go ahead and get off. There is no board or action item today, nor unless another commissioner would like to discuss it, anything happening with respect to the Laura Street trio. I know I've been pinged several times about, are we going to talk about this today? As far as I'm concerned, it is not an agenda item. Mr. Alexander, as far as I'm aware, you're still working to figure out if and how this could be structured and if it works.
Yes.
So I presume there's no update to provide here or frankly to the acquisition committee yet. Is that
No.
correct?
Nothing to update on.
Fantastic. So are there any commissioners that have any, open questions on that at the moment? Excellent. Hearing that concludes my chair's comments, but I will open it up to my other commissioners if they'd like to comment on anything at the moment. And I would just like to note for the record that we do now have our physical quorum present. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Commissioner Brock, no, please.
I really think we need to look at, what we brought up in our last board meeting about our landlords and our Section 8. I've got numbers of calls, about our vouchers, being too low for people to find something. And so I think we should really, visit that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brock. Mr. Alexander, I believe if you could give a summary on that issue, just to kind of, realign us and reorient us to the issue between the current stated voucher amounts and the current third-party rents amounts.
So currently we have about 8,300 people on our Section 8 program. And the fair market rents are set by the federal government, and they normally come out every year based on the fair market rents. We, as the Jacksonville Housing Authority, participate in SafeMar, which we have smart area fair market rents for over 47 area codes. When you look at the makeup of our housing authority and we're having 8,300 vouchers, we have about 99% that is utilized. So you have to look at that similar to the absorption rate. Typically, when I just read a report that came out just recently from HUD, you got over 65,000 vouchers that was unleashed up just recently, and that number increased to 114,000 nationally. Because you got some of these housing authorities that are peaking around 88 or 90%, and the biggest drop was between June all the way up until this past November. In terms of Jacksonville, we give a substantial amount of money because we use the fair market rents. What we run across is that some folks want to be in specific areas instead of living across town. So, and the federal government looked at it, we provide you a voucher, we provide you with a voucher amount, and you can find a place everywhere. And unfortunately, in the highest areas, the housing stock are limited there. Overall, we understand that, and these just the practitioners in the industry, we understand that the rents are going up everywhere. And I'm sure HUD will come back with some alternatives in the future. This past December, they did come out with a PIH notice stating that the housing authority can raise the rents up to 110% without any authorization from them. Now, what that does is put a substantial amount of burden on the housing authority in terms of the profits. But what it also does is that you can raise the rent up to 110%, but they only allow you to raise that rent up for 1 year. Then it has to go back. So the problem would be if you raise that rent up, and depending on how many you raise up, you have to send that rent right back to the normal rent after this 1 year is up.
So just for my own edification, so hypothetically, we could raise, for sake of argument, $1,000 voucher to an $1,100 voucher for 1 year
Yes,
to be able to find a property. However, there's no guarantee that that 1,100 will be available in year 2,
that's correct.
which means you're now $100 a unit short
Yes.
in next year's rent. Okay, thank you.
And
And-
then if I may ask
Mhm.
also, Commissioner, if you, and you can't do it basically in one areas. You have to be able to, if you do it for one, you should be able to do it for another. So that's where the dilemma is at. So
Okay.
hopefully when the fair market rents come out this year, the federal government taking consideration that the rents went up 23% everywhere else. And maybe that may factor in to their decision.
Commissioner Brock, are you hearing from our constituents that it's those that are without that need that, or is it? I guess I'm looking for context, Commissioner Brock, as to what our constituents are saying.
It's our residents that's just got vouchers that are out on the street looking, or those that have to transition from one property to now to another property, is having problems with finding something within because the vouchers are set up based on the income.
Mhm.
And so with it being based on the income, sometimes the vouchers are paying low because it's based on the income of the person. And so they're having struggles with trying to find housing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it could just be the 50% voucher. The other 50% that they're required to pay is too much for them to pay. Correct.
hmm
Okay.
And then the reason I was talking about our landlords, because I looked at a property that passed inspection, and I couldn't believe it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Ms. Brock, Commissioner Brock. 1 second on that one before we circle, because Mr. Alexander and I were working on something which I want to inform the board of. But so circling back, so Mr. Alexander, are you in communication with our constituents that have a voucher that are looking but are unable to find an apartment? Do we communicate with that constituent somehow?
Normally, when someone's looking for an apartment, they normally let someone know, their counselor know, because they have to have an extension. You give them 30 days or 60 days for their voucher. If they run any problems, then they normally come in and get an extension. But we keep a list of units that's available. We have a list of participating landlords that's available. So again, if they want to be in a specific area, it may be challenging. But if you look at the overall city, then there's other options out there. And then Ms. Brock hit a key point, is some of it based on your income,
Okay.
you know?
Well, Mr. Alexander, if you could maybe coordinate with Ms. Brock
Yes.
between now and the next board meeting to see, what struggles are being faced and if there's anything systemic that we're missing that we might be able to address. It sounds like it's market conditions coupled with income restrictions. But certainly if we could be proactive, looking to see if there is something. And I'll ask Commissioner Brock if you wouldn't mind working with Mr. Alexander and his team. That'd be very welcome. Commissioner Reeves? Yep, you're good.
Sorry for being late,
No.
Mr. Chairman. But I did catch the tail end, and I think I could get the gist of what the conversation was about. Market conditions, and there's the culprit here. We as an entity, as an agency, are probably not going to be able to resolve this or solve it, but we can play a major role in the direction of how this community addresses this. And I think, we've talked about this, and I know that we're working on it. Of being able to provide control as much of the housing inventory as possible, allows us to have vouchers, our vouchers, to mean more to people in and out of the system. So we're aware of that, but people out there who are listening just thinking facing our tail.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great point. Anything else on this specific topic? Something I wanted to, any other commissioners have points before I move on? Something else I wanted to let the commissioners know. I'm sure you've seen one or two more apartment complexes that have made the news for all of the wrong reasons here in Jacksonville. At my request, Mr. Alexander has gone ahead and circled his group. They'll be sending out information requests, asking for information, asking for explanations. We have tenants that are there. I suspect they will be inspections of those units in the short order. But I did want to make the board aware that I did ask Mr. Alexander to pursue those, and should it justify the need for anything formal from a board action, that he bring it to this board's attention. Based on what I understand, hopefully these are more isolated incidents, but there's a couple that sure make your eyebrow raise and wonder what's going on. So I wanted to make the board aware of that. Mr. Alexander, did the one in particular letter go out?
Yes, that
Okay.
letter went out today.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
We sent it actually to their attorney.
Okay, great. And which project was that, just so we're aware for the record?
That was Boathouse Apartments.
Boathouse, yes. Okay,
And it's listed underneath Boathouse LLC.
okay.
Yes.
So I would encourage, as if you all, if the commissioners hear of some, or frankly, if other people hear of some, we can't catch them all because there's, certainly things that fly under the radar, but I would encourage the commissioners, when you see something, say something to Mr. Alexander. Him and his team appear to have a very good process in order at the moment to begin scratching at the surface of some of these issues. So any questions on that particular one?
So what was the issue? What was the issue with the boathouse?
My understanding was there was serious concern about some life health safety standards in the units, the viability of whether some of the units should be inhabited. There was allegations of, being forced out, not keeping it ready, being forced out so they could redo the unit to take it to a higher rent value, which is, precisely what we're looking to police. Police is a strong word, what we're looking to monitor against. So it certainly merited some questions. But yes, that's,
And that's owned by another a third party, basically out of Jacksonville.
I don't know if they're out of Jacksonville or not, Commissioner. I
Mhm.
think it's just an LLC name.
Okay.
Mr. Alexander found the name of their attorney, as I believe there's a pending lawsuit,
Yes,
correct?
it is. That is
Okay.
correct.
So I'm not sure exactly who the owner is, and hopefully they're willing to communicate with us so we understand what's happening. Any other questions? That is, there is one more, Mr. Alexander, I know we spoke of this during the governance committee's meeting. I wanted to make the board. As you all can see, there are 5 of us here at the meeting. There's supposed to be a 7-member board. Mr. Alexander's begun the process of having some conversations with our other fellow board members about their willingness to continue to participate. And I expect those conversations to be wrapped up in relatively short order.
Yes.
And if they are no longer able to participate, I am hopeful that we'll be able to have some other board members that will be able to participate as well. We certainly appreciate that life events happen, yet we still need to be able to function as a fully formed board. So Mr. Alexander has taken that on, and it was discussed at governance committee meeting. And Mr. Alexander, when you're ready for those updates, I'm sure the balance of the board would be appreciative of them. Not asking for them today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, that'll close chair's comments unless Commissioner Green or Commissioner Griggs, I opened it up to the balance of the commissioners before. Any comments? Fantastic. All right, we'll move on next to the approval of the board meetings. You should have in front of you the board meetings from Monday, January 31st. Our very large thanks to Carol Martin, our court reporter in the back. I had a chance to look at these minutes and I did not have anything to state or revise. Were there any other questions on the minutes from any of the commissioners? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? I have a motion from Commissioner Brock. I have a second, Commissioner Phillips. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motions are approved. Mr. Lohr, we look forward to your presentation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Financial. January
sorry, Mr. Lord, salary and benefits being low as in the cost has not been incurred for the year yet? Or, okay, so it's just a timing function. Okay, thank you.
Get a vacancy. Yeah. These are statements as of January, right? Bonuses we gave to employees were everywhere. Okay, so that will too, I guess, that gap.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Lord. Occupancy low at 63% again because we're converting, renovating. And when do we expect those to be online and finished?
Um, Yes, for August for Holden Creek, August 1st.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lord, can you go back to the, I have, of course, I have a question. Can you go back to the reserve section, Mr. Lord, for a second, please? And I suspect that's what this is probably about.
No, that
Okay.
is based on, we had a finance meeting and a question was brought up that we was bringing to the board the capital fund money.
Mhm.
And they understood and it was fine about the capital fund providing, they had a spreadsheet on where the money was being spent at. So that spreadsheet
Much
contains the
appreciated.
information on where that capital fund is 5 million being spent at.
Got it. So I go back to this question, which I appreciate. We have these reserves. It looks like we've got those. It also sounds like we're generating net operating income every month, which is obviously according to our budget, which is exactly what we're trying to do. As you go into your 6-month budget review, Mr. Lohr, which I think we're going to start here shortly in the next month or two. I'm curious if in the budget you will be presenting to the financial committee, whether it be pulling some reserves or utilizing some of the net operating income to either provide additional resident services, to look at, future renovations, to look at additional capital needs and beginning to get ahead of those things. Will those things be addressed in that process?
Very, very good point. We just signed a contract today with Nelrock Company, who is doing physical needs assessment. So we just signed a contract this morning with procurement. And so they are in the process of moving forward with that initiative. On the backside of that, we do receive capital fund money every single year. And you have 2 months to obligate it and 4 years to spend it. And we have it mapped out for the next 5 years. And that spreadsheet that you have in front of you lists all the initiatives and the cost of all the initiatives that we plan to use that $5 million.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned, Mr. Lohr, that as an agency, it sounds like we're running ahead on net operating income as opposed to where we budgeted. Okay. Those were the questions that I had. Commissioners, any other questions? No? Okay. Mr. Lohr, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Moving on, I believe we're now on number 7 of the agenda. We have 4 resolutions before us today. Before Mr. Alexander gives us an overview, I will ask, I believe all of these were directed or should have been directed to the Finance Committee first. Commissioner Green, were these all reviewed by the Finance Committee?
Yes.
And did the Finance Committee have any comments or concerns about these resolutions?
The one about the credit card.
Okay,
We had the concern.
so there was some, perhaps a conversation that needs to take place about that?
Yes.
Okay, so at the moment, Mr. Alexander, I'd like to hold the credit card resolution aside. Were there any other questions or comments about the other 3 resolutions, Mr. Green, Commissioner Green?
No.
Okay. Does any of the other commissioners have any questions or comments about the other 3 resolutions? I did read them. They seem to be pro forma and based on the Finance Committees. I'm assuming you're recommending approval of those 3, Commissioner Green?
Yes,
Okay.
the one regarding, the first one regarding the, what is this, the Yardi, the
Yes.
software contract?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I, that one,
Yes.
basically, there's not much we can do with that one, so. But
Buy
we-
it or leave it?
Right. But we did want to, I think it's like get another,
They're looking for other software.
yeah, just to keep them in check. For the
Understood.
most part.
Any other comments, Commissioner Green?
No.
Mr. Alexander, do you want to expand on any of these?
Yeah, so actually it was 2 of them, Commissioner Green. The 2 of them was the capital fund grant money, which was the $5,567 million. And the committee wanted to make sure that they had documentation of where that money was spent. So that's why you have
Gotcha.
the spreadsheet right there. Also, the question was brought up, what was the policy that we had in place to govern the credit cards? And what you have right there on your desk is a policy to govern that credit card. Commissioner Phillips brought that up to make sure that we had, when we came to this board meeting, make sure we have that credit card policy. We have that credit card policy for that
Okay.
as well.
So I have some questions around that, but before we get to that, are there any questions around resolutions 2022 JHA 7, 2022 JHA 8, or 2022 JHA 10? Commissioner Griggs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy that Commissioner Green team talked about the Yardi contract. I do think it's helpful that the team will try to, I guess, vet these contracts because they get to be very technical, right? And some of us don't understand everything that's going on within them. And we trust the procurement staff to do all the legwork, find that for us. But I was also going to ask a question about, are we going to apply that same process to enterprise integration as well, 2022 7. I know that there's no change in pricing, but it just seemed fair that we were going to apply that rationale to JHA 8, and we do the same thing for 7 as well.
Commissioner Green?
What was the enterprise?
They
integration.
actually as our host, and they manage our servers and all that other IT stuff. Yardi is basically the software, and they are actually our host. So to answer Commissioner Griggs, we are looking into that. We are looking to possibly bring that, if it's economically feasible, to bring that in-house and what that looks like. So yes, we are looking into that possibly in the long run.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr.
Yes.
Alexander. I know once we get in,
Yes.
it's highly technical, right? And it's very difficult to want to switch, right? Even if the price is right, sometimes
Right.
we don't want to risk everything that goes along with
Yes.
switching on the technology in midstream. So just as long as I think it's prudent that we kind of keep an eye on those services, knows it's because they're pricing, they haven't built in efficiencies
Yes.
on their end that we may not be realizing.
Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. And I have a follow-up that to Mr. Alexander, maybe to Ms. Morris as well. So I'll put her on the spot. So along the lines of what Commissioner Griggs just said, the first is, and I may be complete, what does enterprise integration actually do?
Well, now, for starters, that young man back there is from
That's what it is.
EI. He provides
Okay,
all of our technical assistance throughout the system to help us keep our system running.
okay,
And we also have a call center where if anyone have any issues with the computers or anything, it is, you can put a ticket in and they manage that process. But they actually manage our infrastructure when it comes to IT.
okay, understood. And then sort of along the lines to Commissioner Griggs's point, I know I'm aware of what Yardi does, property management software. We know we're in this for the long haul. You mentioned this, but I was just wondering if there's a clear flow chart of how we get to a decision tree or something. Is it economically feasible, prudent, or appropriate that we just develop our own management software? I know several management companies that have it. It integrates in, they've done it themselves. They've taken the best of all worlds and put it in. What was the contract? $383,000. If we deployed $383,000 one time to develop a software system, is that prudent of us to think about doing? And you don't need to answer that today, but I think it's a question for potentially you and Ms. Morris and others to have. I'm sure Yardi does very well for us, but it sure would be nice to have an additional $383,000 in our bank account every year. So Commissioner Griggs, thank you for pushing me in that direction with that thought process. Commissioner Griggs, please.
Just going to add, and I'm very familiar with outsourcing IT services across the board, so I don't have a problem with that. But I think just for our purposes, the infrastructure on how that operates, does the Yardi team and the EI team, they report to our operations person, or is it a person between them that's part of our staff they report to?
They report right to the director of IT.
Okay.
So anything in Director of IT, which is Ms. Evan, Mars, who's been with us for more than 15 years, have a good working relationship with them and knows the system very well.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so before we get to the credit card policy, can I get a motion to approve, assuming there's no other general conversation, can I get a motion to approve 2022 JHA 7, 8, and 10, please? I have a motion. Can I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Brock, Commissioner Brock. Any further discussion on those three? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving resolutions 2022 JHA 7, JHA 8, and JHA 10 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, those three resolutions are passed. I'd like to turn our attention now to resolution 2022 JHA 9. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Alexander, if you can give us a backdrop on this resolution, please.
So this resolution, JHA number 9, is to approve credit cards for Director of Maintenance and as well as the Director of HCV. In the past, it's always been where the CEO has a credit card and the HR person has a credit card and the Chief Financial Officer has a credit card. We have been experienced, as I explained to you a couple weeks ago, we had the water main burst underneath this Hogan Creek building. We had to call maintenance out, and we unfortunately, but fortunate this time, we didn't have to put folks in a hotel. But typically, anytime we have an emergency, we had a fire not too long ago, we have to put folks into a hotel. We normally have an account with the hotels, but if for some strange reason that hotel is occupancy is to 100%, then we may have to find some other alternative. Keep in mind, we do have other alternatives when it comes to hotel, but it normally falls on the night shift person that's responsible to address these emergencies. So we just thought it would be prudent to make sure that the Director of Maintenance, as well as the Director of HCV, have a credit card for those departments.
Okay. Commissioner Green, as Chair of the Finance Committee, did you have any comments or questions on this one before we go further?
In the meeting, it was basically speak about the policy and who has, not who has access to it, but I guess, was it the repercussions, what would happen?
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the commissioners first with questions, then I'll address mine later. Perhaps they'll be addressed here. So commissioners, any comments or questions to start?
Is indicated that the Director of Maintenance and the HEB Director would be added. I think it would be credit cards
Yes.
in here. That would be comment. And then says that they shall be authorized a maximum limit of up $10,000. So are you going to set the limits based on what they are, or will they all have 10,000?
We just basically set it at 10,000.
Then in here it says the Chief Financial Officer shall maintain a list of credit cards. And that's why I asked that question. And it speaks about having to submit invoices. I think we need a time frame. The invoices should immediately be submitted, but certainly within 5 working days. Nothing gonna be set on, but I know invoices tend to get lost in somebody's pocket or purse or somewhere. So setting a limit on getting that, I think would be an idea. And you talked about some of the uses, and I guess travel is included where it says approved functions, travel, lodging for approved functions. So that all of that obviously would be associated with authority. business,
Yes.
travel. Sorry, was just a couple more. On the second page where it talks about important credit cards are issued. Render all commission credit cards upon payoff active status. And I think we should add that the authority would be. And still have the numbers out there. Then below that, it says the CEO shall review and recommend a file of credit prior to submission to authority. They're gonna submit their payment request to you directly for you to put them approved. That seems,
Normally, when we have an emergency, since I've been here, they normally call and let us know what the situation is, and we make a decision right there.
Commissioner Phillips, if I may interrupt, I read that differently. I read it, CEO shall review and recommend approval or denial of credit card invoices. And I thought it meant a paying of the actual
Right.
credit card down. But it's a good point Commissioner Phillips makes. We should clarify which is which. I'm indifferent. I would think you'd want to know what's being charged, but you know,
definitely,
yeah.
somebody's making a major purchase, they ought to send you a text, have some kind of procedure where they're sending you a text or calling you and saying, this is going on,
Yes.
water broken, we've got to fix it, or whatever that is. But I may have read this differently, but it clarify that, rate form, balance due on any credit card account shall be paid in full, because, and that seems a little bit after the, after the fact, because if somebody charges something on one of our credit cards, we're gonna have to pay it. Now, if it's in error or somebody did something that they weren't authorized to do, you got to deal with that individual, but we don't want our credit messed up because somebody didn't go through the proper channels or did right thing. And I thought most of this was kind of based on emergency needs, and of course, aside from travel that may rise for that. But under the current system for travel, all travel has to be approved.
That's correct.
And who actually books travel?
It all depends on what department you're in. Each department has an assistant, and their department normally makes travel for them.
But then when it comes to paying for that travel, most places, hotels want you to put your credit card down prior to booking the room. Getting a flight, you gotta pay for it. Those assistants don't have credit.
No,
So who does procurement handle?
no, they normally provide their assistants with their credit card number.
Person.
Yes.
Okay.
They normally provide them with their credit card number. Whatever the agency credit card number is, they just give them a credit card.
Oh, the agency credit
Right.
card, okay,
Right.
not personal credit. But again, those procedures ought to already be in place as far as the time frame for them submitting
Yes.
any reimbursement vouchers, any invoices that need to be paid. So those were the things, putting timeframes in here for submitting, invoices or receipts, that document any purchases was a biggie for me, as well as listing the positions that might, receive credit cards. And then clarifying recommendation of receive, go to or deny credit card invoice prior to submission. So those could be.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Brock?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I thought we were in finance. I thought we were only approving for 2 people to come on board with the credit cards. It was already with that, the CEO, the finance, and those people. We were just approving maintenance and ACB. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner Brockett, and again, I'm making an assumption. The resolution is specific to the Director of Maintenance and the Director of HCV,
Mhm.
but I'm making the assumption that a policy was probably requested for going
Right.
forward, and
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
that makes sense to me. Okay,
Mhm.
Commissioner Griggs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I read the policy, my concept, I thought what this was supposed to cover is that the credit card policy covers purchases previously approved. You have a situation where a purchase order cannot be executed. Say it's, you got to move people, hotels, whatever, you got a purchase order, apply to the hotel. We don't take that here. We don't need that. Then you could whip out a card and pay. Travel as well. You've already made your, you got approval for your travel, and instead of paying for it and getting reimbursed, you use the agency's card to do that. In my mind, that sort of eliminates any opportunity for abuse because you're only paying for the number that's on the approved document. Am I wrong?
Commissioner, no, I think that makes sense. That it's either a pre-approved, go ahead and pay for it with the credit card, or exigent circumstances, we don't know what the ultimate amount's going to be for hotels or a plumbing repair, fix it and make sure we provide the appropriate documentation. But it really should be, the one line I like here is only issued by the CEO, and the CEO is, cross-checking these things. And whether you delegate that authority or not is up to you, but that one was important. Like, I agree. This should not be a whatever you decide to buy goes on the credit card.
Yeah. Well, even in those situations where, and you got a circumstance where outside of the nature of the amount that's been approved, someone still has to circumstantially approve before
Mhm.
you use the card. Is that correct? Okay, so that would come back to you, right?
That's
Or
correct.
somebody in operations or whoever.
No, they come right to me.
Okay, so there'd be backup before.
Yep. Any other questions from any? Thank you, Commissioner Griggs. Commissioner Green?
No, you're fine.
Commissioner Phillips, please.
Maybe in this procedure document that such point that can document that echoes it. Prior to.
Commissioner Green? Okay. So I have a couple of things. I concur with Commissioner Phillips. Again, just coming from the private world, I'm expected to upload my receipts into the system within 24 hours, or it becomes my personal expense. So I'm not saying it needs to be that or that way, but I would think 24 to 48 hours is ample time to supply receipts to Mr. Lohr, so he's not pulling his hair out at audit time, or whoever. So I would recommend, I'd recommend that. Relative to the positions and who's getting credit cards, from where I sit, I don't particularly want to be that involved in operations, but I want to know. So it'd be helpful to have a list that's maintained, and it can be reviewed once a year to say, here's people who have the credit cards, any concerns, something like that. And then we talked about the payment of invoices, immediately canceling the credit cards. Oh, yeah, to Commissioner Gregg's point, I just want to make sure that we don't get out of check. So the process would be, Mr. Alexander, is Chris Walker wants to go pay for travel with the credit card. Chris Walker tees up the travel and says, Mr. Alexander, I need to go here. Can I pay for this with the credit card? You confirm, goes on the credit card. Is that an accurate summation?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So with that, I'd recommend that maybe those policies come back. I don't if we feel, Mr. Alexander, that, and I'll demur to your guidance on this, and frankly to the finance committee as well. If we feel the director of maintenance and HCV need this before the next board meeting in 30 days, I'm fine having that conversation. As I don't believe we have a policy in place currently, do we?
No.
Okay. We can certainly have that conversation, or should we, the question then becomes to my fellow commissioners and to the finance committee, do we finish the policy and come back and revisit this in 30 days? But I'd like to understand the need before we engage in that conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Commissioner Green and then Commissioner Griggs?
My understanding is if it's an emergency late night or whatever, Dwayne isn't available, the two people use a credit card. I mean, that's like the main reason for it. And I don't know, it seems to me that's in policy, but I guess we're saying that it isn't. I mean, it seems pretty standard.
Commissioner Green, I think it is standard for employees to have credit cards to use. My question was just procedurally, do we put the policy in place first and then authorize the credit cards, or do we authorize the credit cards and then have the users confirm use of the policy? It's a procedural question. I think to your point, I think it's a practical thing that we should be doing, but
Mhm.
Commissioner Griggs? Oh, sorry,
And
Commissioner
then
Griggs.
how many additional credit cards?
We
Two?
will only have two more additional.
So,
credit cards.
so $20,000 would be the most. I mean, I'd say just go ahead and do it, then policy letter.
Commissioner Griggs?
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering, technology is a little different than it was when I was in government, right? And, most department heads had credit cards that they were responsible for, just like their employees. But today, it almost is more practical, or as practical, to have a floating system within the finance department, right? They can pay for whatever we need electronically, without burdening, making someone else responsible. If it was an emerging situation, all you need to be able to do is to clear with Mr. Alexander, right? And someone from finance could electronically take care of the transaction. Now, I'm not saying that's the way we should go, but I'm just saying that, that with all of the technology out there, I don't know if it's practical anymore to issue credit cards. Because like Commissioner Phillips mentioned before, put up the card, you still have the number, right? So it means electronically you can score, but it also means that we have more flexibility in how to take care of transactions.
Thank you. Commissioner Brock and then Commissioner Phillips.
Yes, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Briggs and what he was saying, it brings me back to what Mr. Alexander had told us at the board about Hogan Creek when they had the water pipe, the bus, and Mr. Mitchell had to go and purchase water because they had no water in their units. And so, and it was late at night, so I don't know if he would have been able to get in touch with
Right.
Mr. Dennis to be able to do electronic water purchase. So that was the reason too that Mr. Alexander was bringing to the board to try to get Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Hunt a card so that in the case of an emergency late at night like that, they won't be caught off guard, and able to do what they got to do for the residents.
Commissioner Phillips. Thank you, Commissioner Brock.
Just briefly, but I did wonder when it was brought forward, our procurement was not included in the list. Because typically in emergency situations, you go to the procurement department or designated people in the, just thinking about during the hurricane season, and all of the department heads are remanded to the operations center as needs develop. The procurement person is the person who you go to directly in order to get something that you need emergency basis. You don't go all over to everybody else. Because one of the things is as a lawful use. There are HUD requirements and restrictions about procurement, which nobody should be any more familiar than Mr. Alexander and the procurement team as to what those limitations are. And we certainly don't want to get upside down of any HUD regulations when we're. So I did think about why procurement was in order to receive it, but maybe because, do they report to you, Ms. Will? I didn't think so. But, you know, that's just a thought, because all else fail, can't find Mr. Alexander, can't find the HCV or the maintenance person, then somebody's gonna have to be reached, and that's probably going to be. I guess it is on salary.
Commissioner Griggs.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Brock's point, my comments not to try to minimize the need. I understand that what I just want us to take a look at, because I know that some people, maybe not these two individuals in particular, don't want credit cards. Some of the department heads, I worked in government, did not want to be issued a card, you know, just because they didn't want to have the responsibility. They prefer to try to stay out front as much as possible, to the point where if there was a need for something.
But they don't have to use a credit
Yeah,
card.
yeah, but I'm just saying that my point is just, there's maybe perhaps on the table, we should look at, you know, the technology that's there to assist us in doing this outside of just issuing a card.
Yeah.
Do we have any blanket purchase orders that would allow for team to go out and make purchases?
Yeah, we use all of that, Commissioner. And what happens is, sometimes if the whole hotel is at occupancy, they have conventions and events here. So where we may have a blanket purchase order at, we can't get a room there. And it's very challenging 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning when you have a family that's being displaced. And then the maintenance supervisor, in most cases, uses his own personal money to put the folks up. So we have constant issues of that. And in terms of having procurement, everything we do is go through procurement, but this is specifically for emergencies. And procurement, unfortunately, is not the first person we receive a phone call in emergency. It's always on-call maintenance person who always contact our maintenance personnel who have to make a decision at 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday or Monday or whatever night it may be.
Okay.
Just to
You
convey.
said you are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You see, okay, we gotta keep going this way. I
Yeah.
was kind of walking up.
You're on the line. If you could make.
That's all I'm
Please, it'd be
talking
very much appreciative. Thank you. So kind of circling back to all this, just to kind of bring it to a head, I kind of see this diverge into almost 2 separate paths at this point. The need for what I understand is these 2 credit cards to address these situations, which again, I'm not in favor of. I think they make practical sense. But I think what I'm also hearing here is we'd like to refine this policy a little bit more, but there may be and probably should be a review, for lack of a better word, of how financing is doing credit cards. Are there alternative payment systems? Is there an easier way to do this? Having an in-depth conversation about TD, you know, is there an app? I know we have an app where you just upload your receipts direct. So I would encourage, you know, you and Mr. Lohr and the finance committee to maybe begin that conversation. I know we've been with TD Bank for a while. I'm sure they're a wonderful bank, but I'm sure there's other potential options out there. Always a fan of local. So for what that's worth, but you know, to me, it's kind of separated into 2 appropriate conversations. These 2, and then a much larger conversation around how we do it, policy, procedures, technology, etc.
Talking about blanket orders. I was not. I was thinking more that we have a maintenance, got lots of
Yeah.
pipes and bolts. Some store here, Jacksonville, So do we have blanket orders already with that?
Use it, correct, you just.
Yeah.
And I see our esteemed colleague shaking his head, yes. Is that, it sounds like that's the case.
Yes,
We have
we have
blanket
those.
POs with
Yes.
Lowe's and whomever else it might be.
So a lot of this conversation, you know, one in the middle of the night, they're not open, so you're not going to them in the middle of the night. And if we've got an established blanket order, we can go out and get whatever we need, then it becomes somewhat depending on.
Okay.
Not to belabor it, I don't see, I don't have any quandaries having these cards available to directors and make sure we need. But at some point, I'd like to come back and add how often they were actually used.
Sure.
You know, and what they would use to get a feel.
Any further discussion on these two matters? So specifically with respect to JHA 9, 2022 JHA 9, is there a motion on the table for this one? I have a motion.
That we
Go ahead.
revise the policy because you wanted to change some documents in the policy.
I'm actually, if I may, Commissioner Brock, I want to focus only on the resolution. I don't necessarily think it's appropriate we approve this policy yet. I think we need to just tweak it a little bit, update it, and then come back and revisit that if that's acceptable.
Concern with that is nowadays things are so quick with technology. They'll have the credit card probably within
Mhm.
whenever they're ordered. And I think a part of this policy should require that whoever has a credit card, including those already existing, that they have to sign this policy, understanding that they have received it and they know that they have to adhere.
I think we could make that friendly amendment to the authorization resolution that says these individuals will, upon placement of the credit card policy, will sign and acknowledge the terms of that policy. So we'll need a minor amendment potentially to the resolution, Mr. Alexander. Could I get potentially a motion, Commissioner Phillips, with that language?
I move the approval of resolution 2022 JHA 9. The understanding that once finalized, all holders of authority credit cards will sign the credit card policy acknowledging adherence.
I have a motion. I have a second for Commissioner Brock. Do I have any further discussion on the resolution? Hearing none. I have a motion on the table to approve 2022 JHA 9. It's been seconded. As stated, with the caveat being provided on the last sentence of the now therefore to add, provided that such individuals will sign, acknowledge, and comply with any and all policies concerning credit cards established from the Jacksonville Housing Authority. I see our esteemed legal colleague shaking her head yes, that'll work.
Killed it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, that resolution as amended has been passed. Again, Mr. Alexander, if you could work with Finance Committee then to wrap up
Okay.
the credit card policy as discussed, it'd be great to have that approved at the next board meeting. That'd be much appreciated. That takes care of item number 7 on the agenda. At this point in time, Mr. Alexander, we would be very appreciative if you wouldn't mind giving your CEO report and giving us some updates.
So I'll just give you a brief update, keep it short. A financial audit is on pace for the 3 rare properties. It's just about completed. I spoke about it earlier. The physical assessments will be conducted by NELROD. NELROD has done assessments across the country with many housing authorities. So we signed that contract earlier today. In terms of Centennial Towers, everything is done in that building except for the first floor. The first floor is being done of the offices, and everything else is being done in that office, on the first floor. So hopefully everything will be done next month by the 15th, with the exception of the generator. We had to order a new generator for the outside to carry the load of the two brand new elevators. In terms of Hogan Creek, that project is moving right along. They're on the 10th floor. The cabinets is ongoing, so that project is moving right along. We anticipate closure on that property in sometime August. And last week, we had 2 days of executive leadership training through NARO, the National Association of Redevelopment Housing Authorities. They came in for 2 days and they gave all senior staff and deputies training for 2 days, and I think that went extremely well. We will reschedule them again in another month or so that everyone will have a certified management executive certificate on senior staff and junior staff in a sense. But it speaks about leadership and competencies and the whole 9 yards. Excellent class. Also, we had fair housing training for everyone in the agency. Today, we have folks from the Institute of Real Estate Management came in yesterday, and they are giving training to all of the maintenance people as of today. But everyone else had it over the last several days. And in terms of the file scanning, we're moving to a paperless environment. And we are right now out of close to 11,000 files. We got close to 8,000 files, a combination between both departments. And we're moving that initiative right along. And that completes my report. Any questions?
And everything through the spirit of this policy.
We will keep the documents for a period of time, and then we will move it over to Iron Mountain and move those files out of here. And then we can do everything that we do in-house with files digitally. So we are really looking forward to that. And I think I might have mentioned in the finance meeting, we had did away with the coming into the office on the application. Well, not did away with it. You can actually do the applications online. And doing the applications online was 13 minutes per application, current employee time that we saved. And when we opened the waiting list, December 18, we had more than 6,000 people on that waiting list. And that ended up being that we saved exactly a total of maybe 67 total, I think it was 212 days of work for employees.
Thank you. Sounds like a monumental effort. Where are the files? Do we have our own cloud system, or are we using someone else's cloud system?
We are using our own cloud system.
Is that going to be backed up by someone
Yes,
else?
definitely. We back up everything. Yes, yes.
Any other questions? Any other questions for Mr. Alexander? All right, thank you very much. I know this may be potentially uncouth. However, I do note that we had an individual who did try to public comment that was not able to public comment and is now able to public comment. So specifically, I'm not sure if this is certainly out of order, but I would like to take a moment to recognize an individual that is trying to public comment and give them an opportunity to public comment as is appropriate. So if this individual, I believe his name is Carl, if you could identify yourself, your name and address, and we're going to give you, sir, about 3 minutes for public comment.
Yes, my name is Carl, C-A-R-L, Carl Jr. Grant. I used to reside at 995 Water Street, apartment 422, Jacksonville, Florida, 32204. And I'm a person with disability, 504. I'm calling on a complaint on behalf of Phyllis Brown, which is the caseworker, and Sheila Wilson for violating the American Disability Act and the section of 504. They got all the information to port me into DeKalb County. I've been out of the property for over a week. I've been out of the property ever since February the 2nd, 2022. Gave them the keys. They refused to look at non-compliance, which I had many non-compliance issues in there, dealing with my sink not being fixed a whole bunch of years. I don't know what they got going on with Loft La Villa, downtown Jacksonville, between Miss Phyllis Brown. I don't know what they got going on, kickbacks or something, but something is very unusual. It was a lawsuit that the city of Jacksonville settled with the same thing by violating disability housing rights for people with disability, dealing with disability of Florida based on some research of 2017. And the Department of Justice filed the same lawsuit, which the same problem I'm having now. I done some discapping in 2017 about them violating disability people rights in housing. So they holding my voucher up, Miss Phyllis Brown, Miss Williams, because they say that, oh, I got to pay the $1,500 first. I ain't got no problem with paying the $1,500. I got out of my lease, my 30-day early. I put in a 30-day early termination lease because they refused to fix things at Loft La Villa. I've been dealing with this thing over a year. I don't have no warm water. It's dripping behind the walls. And it take over 60 days before they come and fix anything. The last of all, I have stalking people's above me in 522. This have been mentioned to Miss Phyllis Brown. This have been mentioned to JSO over 70 times to call JSO out there. JSO come out, never take a complaint. Refuse to take complaints. So now, and then I reported to the property manager. They hear you, but they never do anything about it. So in other words, now I ain't got no problem paying the $1,500. Miss Williams sucked me out of neutral. Miss Phyllis Brown sucked me out of caseworker. She sucked me out of some kind of residual neutral agreement. That was signed. The property manager said she was gonna set up a payment arrangement with me. Everything been in place. I haven't heard from Miss Phyllis Brown on my voucher to put into DeKalb County, where she got Georgia. She got all the information. I'm out the apartment. I left the apartment ever since February
Sir,
22nd, 22.
sir,
Go ahead.
thank you very much. That concludes your 3 minutes, and we certainly appreciate this. So, sir, what I'm going to do is obviously we take those things very seriously, and I'm going to ask that Mr. Alexander and his staff work to look into this and see what we can uncover. Obviously, here at this meeting, we don't have that information present, but we hear you, and we're gonna do our best to look into it and see what we got there. All right. Any other closing comments before we adjourn here today? Hearing none. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I have a motion from Commissioner Griggs, seconded by Commissioner Brox. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. No opposition. Thank you all very much for your time today. I appreciate it.